Great. So we gave a few minutes for everybody, in case anybody was stuck on the merit, like we were this morning. Lots of detours. I'm not sure who else had that, but thank you for attending. I'm Amanda MacTaggart. This is my colleague. We also have a co-presenter, TJ Barber, who is in a session next door, and he will be joining us later. We're kind of dividing the presentation and having each person whose sort of content area it is speak about that so that you get it directly from that person. So we're talking about the learning community model as it's been implemented at Manchester Community College. We started that this fall. So it's in its initial infancy, but we do have some initial assessments and things that we'll talk about as well. The way we did it this past year, we had 4 cohorts. 2 of English 093 are developmental, one cohort of English 096, one of Math 095. Each cohort had a course clustering or package of a learning community seminar, an FYE course, and then, of course, their core content area in which they scored into developmental. Session overview, just so everybody knows where we're going and we're steering. We'll kind of talk about the structure as we implemented it. What does it look like at the administration level? All of these pieces will be in your packet as well. The packets in front of you sort of represent an idea of if you see something and you like it, you have it in your takeaway so that you would be able to use it and adjust it and adopt it at your campus. We'll also talk about designing and maintaining the student alliance. We took a very holistic approach to student development and to the learning community, and that played a very integral role. TJ is here, and he'll talk about the instructor roles and insights. It takes a lot of work to be involved in a learning community. It's a lot of work. So that's something that we like to be very upfront about with our instructors. This is more work. It has really great gains, and it has a really great effect on students. And you'll see that through some of the student testimonials, but also through our assessment data. And then, what does it cost? Everybody likes to know that, right? That's a really important one. That's something I was told to put in. It was the last thing I forgot, and an educator of 30 years said, the first question I would ask you is, how much did that cost? And I was like, ooh, put that in so that I don't get blindsided. So what's the basic overview of what it is? We talked about the cohorts, but how did we pick them? AccuPlacer test scores. That was the first thing. They had to score into the developmental sessions. We picked 17 to 21. And they had to be first-time college students. 17 to 21 was picked because when we were trying to do cohort building, it was pretty important that we have a cohesive age group. And then while you were not required to be a first-generation college student, we did provide preferential placement if you did well in the interview. Because there's sort of these qualifying things. We had a lot of students. You'll see we had 88 seats. We actually had 115 to 120, if I'm remembering correctly, students before we shut it off, before we closed what it was, because we had a waiting list. We wound up with 64 because of issues out of our control. We know that scholars and people everywhere are having issues with finances and things are difficult. So our cohort dropped a little bit to 64, but it was still really strong. And a big part was we brought them back 2 days early for a special 2-day on-campus orientation for the group, and they had to agree to participate in sort of all of those things. So how did you perform in the interview? Did you meet the selection criteria? What was your academic potential? That came about when we were discussing with them in their interview, and then will you agree to participate in the cohort? So our program structure was huge, and it was fun to build, I'm not gonna lie. I really enjoyed building the structure behind this. We changed our mission and vision. We integrated choice theory, which was something that happened during orientation. We had a lecturer come in and work with choice theory. We found that was really important, specifically given not only the age group, but the background that most of our students were coming from. Letting them feel empowered, knowing that they had choices, and knowing that that could inform their success. We needed them to be active partners with us in this, and that was something that we found important. We built a lot of community partnerships. I'll dig into them a little bit more. We have dedicated program coordinators and advisors. We had those LC seminars, the holistic student development piece, which Sue will talk to you about in a little while. The collaborative instructional teams. Yes, this keeps building. TJ will talk to you about that. And then I also built a faculty steering committee, pulling together faculty from math and English and pulling in success resources from career development and also from the academic support center and getting ideas. Again, this holistic idea to what it looks like. How do we build them as career professionals? How do we build them as scholars? How do we support them in their academics? So from a practical level, this is just a snapshot. What did it look like? What we tried to do was package the schedule so that they had their first morning class, then they went to the LC seminar. That was led by Sue and myself. And then they went to their second class. So what that looked like, it could be their FYE class was first, then they came to the LC seminar, then they went to English or math, and it could be flipped. We did that because it's a commuter campus. It's really hard to keep students there. So we tried to structure it so that they would stay on campus and stay engaged. They were allowed to pick their other 2 courses, because something I forgot to mention is you had to be a full-time student. We found that that was really important. We knew that student engagement was going to be a big piece, and we wanted to make sure that happened. And then there's just a sample of every Friday we did either college visits or experiential trips, things to broaden their perspective, things to increase their scholarship, and sometimes at night, but that's just a general overview. So we would give this to students so they kind of knew. What did it look like when we were recruiting? This is what it's going to look like. This is what this program is that you are kind of agreeing to be a part of. Those community partnerships that I talked about. Faculty. Like I said, when I came in to the college, I started in May? Yes, so May. And we already had instructors attached to this, and it wasn't a learning community model yet. And we turned it into a learning community model. And so we had to say to the faculty, listen, this is a lot more work, but we think it's going to be a really great thing. We think there's going to be a lot of gains attached to this. There was a lot of communication, a lot of transparency of practice, and a lot of building so that we could get that support across. So it started with our faculty steering committee. They sort of became our ambassadors across campus. This is a great thing. This is something you want to be involved in. And it broadened out with the faculty that were actually attached to the program. Student affairs staff, we had everybody. It was an all hands on deck sort of thing. Everybody was aware of what was happening on campus, so if anybody came in with a question about first scholars, they knew. Financial aid, why? We needed them to. This was something that came up with our students. Specifically, most of them were low income. A lot of them were on Pell Grants. A lot of them were first generation, and they just didn't know how to do any of that. And what happened is you saw some of our numbers dropped. We saw a trend emerging. Students were running into what is financial aid? And what is, if you have the support system at home or you have the knowledge of what the financial aid system is like, you'll persist. We saw drops, so we knew that we needed to build with financial aid. So we created a partnership. We got a dedicated person within financial aid who anytime it was a first scholar, she took them. She's like, I'm going to work with them. I'll make sure they know. We created a process where they changed the language and said, they gave them a card with a date that said, here's the date that you need to check back on the status of your financial aid. So they knew it was a continuing process because that was something that had raised sort of frustration with the students, and we saw it leading to drops. We wanted to remove any barrier to success that we could. Same thing with enrollment management. Like I said, again, a lot of our students were low income, and a lot of them began being dropped for non-payment. So we built a partnership with enrollment management. If they were in the First Scholars Learning community, we had a special drop date. They agreed to work with us to keep them in the program. They also agreed to let us know your student is in danger of being dropped. That meant that Sue and I could do something. We could talk to financial aid, we could reach out to faculty, we could collaborate with the student and help walk them through what that process was. The registrar's office, we had a dedicated contact in the registrar's office as well. We had these special cohorts with our classes being hidden. Couldn't be in our classes if you weren't in our cohort. So we had to make sure everyone in the registrar was aware of what this process was. What were these classes? What was happening with students coming down with special registration sheets? And then again, we had somebody looking out for the students when they went down. If they were a first scholar and they had a question, maybe they were going to drop a class or swap a class. We had a partner there saying, you're in first scholars, you can't drop this, it's a part of the cohort. They also agreed to put holds on our accounts so that students would have a notice come up and we would know that a student was attempting to drop their course. All of these things we found by trial and error. Something would come up, wait, what happened? How did this student get dropped? And we tried to figure out a way that we could support them as much as we could in their success. Student programs, huge. We all know that active students or involved students are successful students. So we worked with TJ to make sure that he was a part of our orientation. He actually taught one of our FYE sections for us, and he stayed a constant and continual presence across all of the cohorts. It was really successful. Professional network. We started a mentoring program, and we brought in professionals. We had a non-themed community, so we had students, and it was fantastic. The diversity of the program was amazing. We have fashion design students and graphic design students, nurses, radiography. We paired them one-on-one with a professional mentor working in the field, someone that could guide their career, someone that could help keep them motivated, someone that could say, you can do this, you can persist, and somebody that could help them in what we think is really important in building that initial white-collar network, something that doesn't always happen when you first start, and especially when you're in developmental, it's really hard to remember why you're doing it if you're not in any of those courses yet. And then we had some community sponsors. We wanted the students to recognize that this was a really big deal. This was a great opportunity, and we wanted them to know that it was special. We wanted them to take pride in being a part of the learning community. So we built partnerships. We were lucky enough to have some of our things sponsored by a local business owner of Subway, by Dunkin' Donuts, by Chipotle, a couple other companies, and people involved in giving us gift certificates and things like that, that we were able to say, these people believe in you. We believe in you. You need to believe in you. Make that choice. And a part of that fed into our program branding. How do you sell this? How do you sell a developmental learning community as something that's special? Something that a student should be excited about, something they should want to do. My background is in marketing, so I'm going to say this was something that was really big. We needed to create value. Excitement, we had to remove a stigma. We did that by changing the name. Initially, it was FIRST. We changed it to First Scholars. See yourself as we see you. Scholars first. How do we breed pride and belonging? How do we replace your myth of inadequacy and get you to believe in your scholarship, to become confident, to pursue education as much as you can? The first thing is, again, I think with the myth of inadequacy, choice theory was a really big thing. You have this choice to view yourself, and you have active choices you can make to help you be successful. We also did something, we had an induction ceremony. So at the end of our 2-day orientation, you can see right there, they got certificates. We had a little ceremony, it was catered. That was one of the things that was donated by Subway. And the students were told, this is a big deal. Hold the certificate in your hand. Visualize this as your degree in 2 years. What does it look like? Where are you? And acknowledge that this is tangible proof that we believe in you. To create excitement, we created something called the Cohort Cup. Not gonna lie, it's like a Harry Potter fangirl moment for me. They loved it. They got points for, and again, we were reinforcing the things that if you knew how to do this college game, if you were lucky enough to have a parent or a sibling that went through, they might have told you it's incredibly important to be involved in campus. It's incredibly important to go to your faculty office hours. It's incredibly important to do these things. Well, we turned it into a competition between our cohorts. They selected their own names. The names reflected, I think, the community itself and the members that made up those rich and diverse groups. They were fun. And we gave them no limits because it was theirs. They needed to take ownership, and we wanted them to have pride in it. Points were attached to all of those things. How many events did you go to? Did you get every single one of your cohort mates to your LC seminar? What did you do? Did you go to faculty office hours? They had points attached to being involved in community service and outreach efforts. So donating to empty soup bowls, making empty soup bowls, doing community drives, things like that. And then, as we said, removing the stigma. What was it? First Scholars was exclusive. First Scholars was something that they could be proud of doing. They were a scholar, and they did start doing that when we would have events. One of the things was a painting. Sue will talk about it a little bit more at the end, and I should have included it in the presentation. They all got together, put their hands in the center, did a little cheer, and said Scholars. And so it was one of those moments where we thought, yes, it's kind of working. Which brings us to the part about designing the alliance. I'm going to transfer the mic awkwardly.
Why, thank you. So like Amanda has been saying, it's a lot of work. And like President Brody said this morning, we illuminate the path for our students. So this is designing the Student Alliance program coordination. So this is a picture of actually the mathletes. So we referred to the groups at first as cohorts, and a lot of the pushback was, what does that mean? What is a cohort? What is this? Oh, it's just a group. So then these are mathletes because they all scored into Math 095. So a developmental math course, so a lot of the focus was on math. So this is a picture of the last icebreaker that we did during the semester. It's called the Web. And the idea is we start with a ball of twine. Each student will say something nice about another student, and then they continue adding on. So at the end, one of the students said, we were once on the web, now we are the web. Now this is from a student from the cohort called the Savages. So they picked that. I felt a little weird about it, but it came from one of the texts they were reading in their English books. I was like, okay, all right, that works. That's what you wanted. So Just to briefly touch program eligibility that Amanda already said, it's first time in college, first generation is preferential, and it's really important that you did not score into college credit, English, or math. MCC serves towns from New Britain to Newington to Hartford, Ellington, and Mansfield. We have a very diverse network of students. The population is also not what you expect to be traditional college students, especially going into a four-year school. There's a lot of barriers, a lot of obstacles, but it's really, understanding the difference between underperforming students and the underprepared student. We also have a lot of scholars that are motivated and a lot of them that aren't motivated. So again, we recruit at general new student orientations according to the criteria, and then we promote the perks of being in a learning community. Dedicated academic advisors, workshops, special orientation, semester events, and my biggest draw was the snacks. So at this point forward, from orientation, from recruitment, is when we start building the student rapport. It's getting to build the alliance, to start having the student understand the position of a counselor in higher ed, in their education. So our roles as program coordinators is to help the students transition into the college and persist in their pursuit of higher learning. The workshops are scaffold to the semester, easing the transition. As academic advisors, we provide facts and pathways in respect to majors, career opportunities, and transfer options. As counselors, we are honest, non-judgmental, and meet the students where they are to provide appropriate services. So again, the workshops are designed to inform and empower students to take ownership of their lives and to transition into college in a group setting. For those that need a more one-on-one basis, we do provide office hours. And then again, it's a very challenging population. These students face financial burdens even with financial aid and additional barriers like transportation and childcare. So if you go into your student planners, and then you can flip through the back, there are the workshop schedules. So there is always going to be a lot of melt in these programs because it's a commuter campus, non-traditional students, but it's not to be discouraged on it. Our students, we have to focus on those who want to help themselves. Students seek affirmation, support, advice, someone to listen to them, positive reinforcement, discipline, consistency, follow through, and what I found to be the most powerful with our students is being honest with them. Not sugarcoating things, but telling them what the facts are. So our college tours and experiential activities also strengthen the student engagement in the learning community. It connects academics with transferable life and career skills. So this is an example of splash therapy. It's one of the first workshops that we do in the semester. First week, it's the honeymoon, right? St. Syllabus week, as Amanda calls it. You kind of ease your way in, but then as things get a little hairy, things get a little more stressful, so then we encourage students to have creative outlets. So we invited them to throw paint on a canvas. At first, some of the students were a little wary of it, but by the end, they just kept dumping things, as you can see. So another thing that I like to do with the students too is to encourage more creative outlets. And over in this corner, what we started to do was intention bracelets and little bits of jewelry. So one of the things I like to do in my spare time is make jewelry. So I encourage students between classes to de-stress, to work with their hands, do things. So then we came up with intention bracelets and slip knot bracelets. Another thing that we're organizing this semester is also a welcome package drive. So for a lot of our first generation college students, to talk about the refugee, current events, things like that. So we're working on a community partnership to bring donations for minority communities. So one thing that Amanda did talk about was we were able to do professional and faculty mentoring, which pairs students with mentors to continue building peer and professional networks and support systems. So the idea is the existing scholars will then be paired with a faculty advisor at Manchester Community College, and then a professional mentor that is an individual within their field to provide different perspectives for the college experience. As program coordinators, we are also academic and life advisors. We set expectations to achieve realistic goals as defined by the student for the student. The emphasis is on academic rigor and the utilization of resources to avoid crisis, which is real and perceived by the student. And then it's also really exciting to announce that this summer we're launching a peer mentorship program with our existing scholars to help recruit new scholars coming in into the fall. It's an excellent opportunity for leadership, continued support, motivation, and motivation to move forward. So Despite the obstacles and difficulties that some of our students face, the resiliency of the motivated students are inspirational. So these are some quotes and some perspectives from some of our current students. So in the left corner, we have Amy Joseph. Becoming a part of the community brought me on a fun, adventurous journey with friends and new experiences I wouldn't have had otherwise. It has expanded my horizon, made me realize I'm capable of, and allowed me to grow as an individual. I am forever thankful. And then over here we have Sabrina. You'll try new things, explore different perspectives, and really get out of your comfort zone. We continually try to challenge our students academically and personally. And if they'd say to me, oh, I'm really scared about A, B, C, and D, and I'm like, you should be. If you're not scared, what are you doing? This is Jordan. She is a pre-nursing student. This program makes the transition from high school to college smoother. You grow as a student, and you also have fun. So these are two of my favorite students, which also happen to be the most challenging students on our end as academic advisors. Lewis, it's because of this program and the friendships and connections it provided me that I'm still at MCC. Josh says, First Scholars taught me opening up to others along with a willingness to try new things has a huge impact on success. And then last but not least, we have Chastity. First Scholars brought my determination and confidence to an all-time high. The fact that it has brought me so close to my fellow First Scholar learning community members and allows us to experience so many new things together makes all my worries about what-ifs of college go away. Without it, I feel like I would have been lost. Since I've been in the program, I know my journey has just begun, and every step I've been taking is a step closer to where I want to be. So it's always most powerful hearing it from the students, right? Amanda and I, we get a little bogged down sometimes with the paperwork, the student contacts. Like, are we making an effort? Are they listening to us in these workshops where their eyes glaze over? But the numbers do prove that they do get it. They are paying attention, and they do appreciate our support. So next slide is, this is the tentative breakdown of the workshop schedule that we had in the fall, which you have a copy of in your student planners. So we have the workshop topics, we have college visits, we went to Central, UConn, Southern, University of Hartford, and Southern Connecticut State University. For experientials, we have Foundations of Leadership workshop. We did a food drive. We're doing the collection for the refugee drive, the mentoring program, and we also encouraged our students to do yoga. So something that was really powerful that I learned last semester was how much of a role sports plays in student persistence. And as a non-athletic person myself, over my head, but the idea of competition and participating in sports really helps the students stay, and yoga was really helpful, and teaching them how to de-stress as well. Okay. So now, this is what Amanda and myself provide as program coordinators, and now I'm going to throw it to TJ for the instructor side. Awkward pass. There you go.
So if I check my phone, I'm not trying to be rude, but I'm also in the session next door because of my involvement with the Faculty Advisory Committee and the Community College Governance Assembly, as well as on the Conference Planning Committee. So this is how we communicate by text messages. One of the things that I did, I brought a copy of my syllabus. Does everybody have one? Oh, okay. So one of the big things, my normal daily role is Director of Student Activities. I'm also over the Office of Mentoring and Cultural Programs, which includes mentor programs, brother to brother, sister to sister, and our veteran to veteran peer mentor program. My whole goal is to get the students engaged outside of the classroom. I also handle new student orientation, and I talk to the students basically about not their college education, because I know they're going to get a tremendous education at a very reasonable price at our institution. What I talk to them about is their college experience. And my philosophy when it comes to programming is that just because we're a 2-year school doesn't mean our students are second-class citizens or shouldn't have access to 4-year type programming. And what I tell every student when they come in is that I want you to find a way to get engaged on campus. That may be through work study, that may be through student clubs, maybe through tutoring in our academic support center. It doesn't have to be just with our office, but you need to find some way to get involved on campus other than just putting your butt in a seat, listening to somebody talk, and going home. And I also go further and I ask who wants to go to a 4-year institution after. And most of the time, 90% of the room raises their hand. And I said, well, what I want you to do isn't walk onto a campus and be just another number and another student. I want you to go and take over. So we program in a way to get the students used to the kind of programming that they're going to see at a four-year institution. Large-scale events, robust student clubs. When I got there on the 23rd, it'll be 6 years ago, we had anywhere from 14 to 18 student clubs. We now have over 42. The biggest things that I've seen when it comes to the First Scholars learning community is the word community. You know, I've taught FYE courses for a couple years. I still see one or two of my students every now and then. The engagement on campus from the students in the FSLC program is by far superior to 99% of our students. 3 of the students that you saw were from my cohort. I love them. They come and see me all the time. And actually Sabrina, the one that had a quote up there, she's the first student. I've been on college campuses since 1993. It's the first time in the history of my experience on campus that I've had a first-year student, the first day of class, turn in paperwork to start a student club. Because I had met her over the summer, had a conversation with her, gave her the paperwork, and I'm like, all right, we'll see where this goes. Maybe I'll see her in October. First day of classes, the club was up and running. Second week, they had a meeting. I mean, so, you know, some of it is really in the screening process that Amanda and Sue do with the interviews and finding students that want to get more out of their experience on campus. That is a critical step. Now, when it came to the classroom, one of the things that you'll see in my syllabus that is a little different because we're not a mandatory attendance state, right? I have 50% of the grade is classroom participation. So I tell them, by default, if you're not here, you're not participating. So you're not getting credit for that day, and it's going to have a negative impact. I really try to get the students to a place where they're comfortable, they want to be involved, and one of the really interesting things is the group dynamic. And it spreads not only from the classroom, but to the workshops. And Sue and Amanda and I have had several conversations. There was one young lady in my class that actually won, I think it was most improved at the end of the semester. Very quiet, very introverted, but she became kind of a little sister for the extroverts in the room. And they were making sure she was comfortable and bringing her along. And by the end of the semester, she was one of the first ones to raise her hand to answer a question, where at the beginning of the semester, I had to actively call on her to even say something. One of the things that we did with the first year experience was include our common read. I don't know if all of your campuses have the common read, but I found that as an effective way to engage them outside of the FYE course, because we have discussions for the common read pretty much every week, and it's not just FYE courses that are involved. So on Tuesdays, we use a book called On-Course. Tuesdays would be heavily on-course, and Thursdays we would do some on-course activities, go over the common read. But for the first 6 or 7 weeks, I would take them to different offices on campus. Because at orientation and in offices, we tell them, well, you need to go to the Academic Support Center, right? And it's in one ear, out the other. So I take them to the Academic Support Center. I say, this is where you need to go to get the help you need. If you're a night owl and you're typing a paper at 3 in the morning, that doesn't mean that you turn it in with grammar mistakes and spelling errors 2 days later, because you can submit it electronically for editing to the Academic Support Center. I take them to Career Services and say, you should not wait until your last semester to go to Career Services. They can help you find a job now. You can take the Focus 2, especially if you don't know what you want to do with your life. The Focus 2 is a free interest survey that you answer 85 questions. Would you rather work outside or in a cubicle? Would you rather talk to people one-on-one or in front of a group of 20? And it helps them narrow down what their interests may lead to as a career field. I take them to our office, student activities, introduce them to the Student Government Association, the student clubs. Take them to the bursars, because what's a bursar, right? I mean, we use terminology that we assume, because we work on a college campus, it makes sense to everybody. Well, first-generation students don't know what a bursar is, have no idea what a registrar does. So, instead of just saying you need to go see this person, I take them and introduce them to people at the offices, so that way they don't have an excuse. And I follow up. We have a session at the library, and they have to do a bibliography as a exercise after that. And I ask them throughout the semester, I go, all right, who's been to career services? Who's been to the academic support center? And we talk a lot about pride. You know, I have one student that he was probably one of the capable of being one of the higher achieving students on campus in his class, that after 6 weeks he started to fall off. And I told him, I said, John, you got a problem. And you need to look. If you're hanging out with people that don't understand why you need to write a paper instead of going to play games or do whatever, you need to find other friends for a couple of weeks. And he actually told me, and I told Amanda and Sue, that reality check was one of the reasons why he was able to actually eventually earn an A in the class and some other classes, because he didn't have anybody at home that was willing to tell him, your education is important. And a lot of the conversations I have with our students is that there are two things you need to be selfish about. And I tell this to every student in orientation, but I hammer it in class. One is time with your family because it's fleeting, right? And the other is your education, because nobody can take that away. So you can lose your car, you can lose your house, you can lose your clothes, you can lose a limb, but you're never going to lose what you learn in your education. Nobody can take that away from you. And I think the most marked difference between teaching an FYE course of just random students and teaching an FYE course in the First Scholars Learning Community is that they are a community. And it's really been a tremendous experience. I mean, now, this was last fall that I taught the class. I still have probably 15 of my 23 students that I see on a regular basis. They come into our office, they're engaged on campus, writing a reference letter for a couple of them. I mean, it really has been fantastic. And I didn't really know what to expect, going from just teaching a Tuesday, Thursday, 8 to 9:20 FYE course to teaching a Tuesday, Thursday, 8 to 9:20 course with the other stuff connected. You know, I enjoyed the individual orientation. I see every new student that comes in, but it was a little different with the First Scholars Learning Community because I don't get to go over to like a high ropes course or a low ropes course or stuff like that with every student. So it really has been a tremendous experience. It definitely is worth the work that it takes because you know I know absolutely the students that were in my section, there was an impact not only from my course but from them being in the First Scholars Learning Community. I think that's about it for in the trenches.
Be on camera and they're going to have to edit out. This is going to be so much fun for them. Two things that TJ sort of mentioned or alluded to, and I realized that we neglected to mention thus far, and it might benefit from some clarification. The picture that's here is one of our other instructors that was in the cohort from an awards banquet that we had. I would love to say that this was my unique invention. It was not. So for several years, I taught film at Three Rivers Community College, and I taught it in a learning community, in a themed learning community, technology learning community. And I went back when I accepted this role and I spoke with the director of initiatives there and said, tell me about your side of it, because I wasn't on that side and I wasn't aware of sort of everything as it happened. And she said one of the things that she found most impactful across the 10 years that they had it, theirs was grant funded, they no longer have a learning community, was the awards banquet that they had. She said for the first time she had parents coming up to her and almost weeping and saying, nobody has ever believed in my child. They've never received an award. They've never been recognized. You have no idea what this means to them. And I thought, I forgot about that. I was at that awards banquet and I remembered it. We did the same thing. Initially, we were a one-semester learning community. We successfully fought and lobbied, and it's a 1 year, to take them across their entire year to have a successful entry year. But we already had our banquet because we weren't sure we were going to get that second semester with them. And it was the same thing. The students got their awards and they stared at them. And I remember zeroing in on this one student who, and I can't tell you why because I love him and he is an amazing, amazing person. He doesn't believe in himself. He has no confidence. Some of it is coming from home. Some of it is internal. And he stared at it like he couldn't believe that it was in his hand. He couldn't believe he had received an award. And he came up and I said, congratulations, you really deserve this. And he said, really? And he got tears in his eyes. And I said, yes. You deserve this. You worked for this and you got it. And it wasn't the only one, it was really great. They were clapping, they were standing up for each other at the award ceremony. It was this really amazing moment where they came together. One of TJ's, the benefit of community that TJ alluded to that we also didn't talk about, he talked about a student who was most improved. We had several students actually who were on the autism spectrum in the communities. One, they were across separate communities, so done together. The student he alluded to, she was one of those students, and the really beautiful part of the community was they were a community. They considered themselves family, and they said it. We're family. And for a lot of our students, they didn't have that family at home. A lot of them don't have that family at home. They made it for themselves on campus, and they looked out for her. They didn't care, they didn't see autism spectrum, they saw her. And it's really amazing because this semester they came in and they said, you know, she elected not to continue in the learning community for spring. And they said, we don't see her. Where is she? We're so excited to see her. And she came for an advising appointment, and I told her that, and she lit up. Because this is a student when we did that web assignment at the end, when they said what she had taught them. So that was what we said. How did they positively impact you? Tell someone else how they positively impacted you. And she had all of this great feedback coming. I learned to listen because of you. I learned to be patient because of you. And she said, it's really hard to trust people. It's hard to trust and believe you. People have been so mean. And yet, at the end of all of this, in my office a week ago, she said, he was really nice. I'm so glad he asked about me. I do miss them. This was important. And it's really great to see sort of that growth. And that even though some of them continued, we only had one section, so our numbers had to reduce from 64 down to 24. It was great, but they still see each other as family. And we've heard that from the instructors that are in their cohort pairing this semester. I received an email and said, what did you do? Because I've never seen a community function like this. In one of their public speaking courses, a student who's very painfully shy stood up and almost wasn't able to deliver her speech. And one of the other students said, we are family. We believe in you. You can do this. And she did. And I think that's really fantastic. And that cohort cup thing, I mentioned it and then I didn't finish. It was a competition. It was for a prize. It was for bragging rights, because why not? But this goes back to that idea of community. You want a pizza party if you won the most points. And so we waited until they came back, sort of as like a come back to spring. You know you want to come back to the college moment. And we said, you had a pizza party, and what do you want to do with it? And the cohort that won said, we're one community. We want all cohorts. And so that's what happened. They had a joint pizza party they shared because that's how much they believed in this idea of let's be one community, let's support each other. So they do these things, but what does that mean? Program outcomes. Probably all wondering. Costs, staffing, what would it look like to have something like this? Here's the costs. We did have special orientation. Did you talk about that? We went to a ropes course on the first day, and the second day were all of those pieces breaking down higher education. You're going to hear this terminology. What does it mean? What do these offices do? What do they do? Prepping them in certain areas. The ropes course, we were able to have their instructors come. Their FYE instructors came. They had that introduction, their FYE instructors. That was probably one of our biggest points. Guest lectures. We had a choice theory lecturist, like I said, who was a colleague of mine from when I worked and taught at UConn. We're going to have peer education training in the spring, a Foundations of Leadership workshop, transferring them to seeing themselves as leaders. Leaders in their own life, leaders in their community, leaders on campus. Our orientation. So that's it. That's how much it's going to cost you. $117.78 for each of your active students if you were to do it. And our costs were a little bit up because we did have some students who attended orientation on the first day, but remember that contract we said? You must come to both days, because we all know the research on that, right? You gotta bring them back early, you gotta keep them on campus for as much time as you can. 2 days was as much as I thought I could bargain with a community college student. But that's not so bad. $5,000 of this was from a grant that I wrote and received. So the cost to the college, not that much. The staffing, myself and Sue, we are here 17 hours a week. So 2 across 17 hours. I will be honest with you, to make it work, to establish it to the degree that we did, faculty steering committees and all of those things, I worked full time, unpaid, because I believed in what could happen with this model and with these students. We had our 4 English instructors and our 4 FYE instructors. That didn't impact our budget. Those were courses that were already going to be offered. Already developmental sections happening, already FYE sections happening. These students already paid their tuition dollars. All that happened was we sealed them as first sections. They were ours only. And then we know the importance of reinforcement that this is a lot of work. Like teacher said, it's a lot of work. And one of our English instructors, David Caldwell, said, this was so much work, but I loved it. One of our FYE instructors actually said, I don't know what you need, but I'll volunteer to do anything for you next year. I love this program, and it was so much more work, but I love it. But that came from also having the faculty steering committee going out and shaking hands. I'm not naive of that. We had these meetings, and I said, we have to build a brand on campus, and we have to get everybody across administration and across faculty, across adjunct faculty, to understand what this program is and what it does. So the chair of developmental English was on our committee, as well as the chair of developmental math, director of career services, director of academic support, the director of New Year. You knew that? That's my office, and I never get his title right. The director of first year and new student programs. And we're going to seek to expand because we have those community partnerships, somebody with financial aid, somebody in all of those areas. We thought we'd start small. We thought we'd expand. We'll add content people as well as we move towards the idea of themed communities. Program assessment. Does it pan out? So this is from fall to spring, and here was our group. 17 to 21-year-olds scoring into developmental courses, all in their first year. 10% higher in retention. This is us in blue. So across ours, you can kind of see it's a pretty good difference. They earned more credits. They stayed at the college in higher numbers, re-enrolling in spring. Their GPA, higher. Their move to college level courses, higher. I would love to have done this differently, but across the same group, students in English 096, if they were not in first, only 74%. 100%. Only 85% or 95%, 62% moved or 80% moved if they were in the learning community. And then was the idea of sequencing. So we know that if education scaffolding, we know that building these skills and keeping them maintained is what will help them propel them through the rest of their college career and help them to build on those successes. So we went further when we assessed to say, okay, so of those students who were able to move into college credit, how many of them immediately took it for spring? And again, our numbers came back higher. So our numbers are right here, 73% or 70% or 56% immediately going into their next class. For the math one, I would like to mention that this is going to be lower, and here's why, because here's something that I couldn't factor in. We did it across who went into Math 138, the gateway course for math, the first college level class. We had several people that were in our health careers pathways. Radiography or surgical technology, they don't have to take Math 138, they have to take Math 109. So for those students, they went into their next sequence of math, but that can't be counted in our factor when we look, but still 6%, not that bad. So to break it down even further or easier, enrollment and retention, through the learning community, we had 10% higher retention on campus. For students getting C's or better and moving into college-ready courses, 21% higher. For English 096, we were 14% higher for English 093. We were 6% higher for math. They earned 15% more credits than their counterparts, and they had a 0.6 quality points higher GPA. And then, again, how many of them moved on? How many continued for spring and started that college level course? Because they needed to. 26% higher, because 100% moved on to English 101 from 096. I don't know if 096 exists on all of your campuses. This is this massive 6-credit model that takes them from the very basic level to 093, and it's huge. And from what we've been told, it's hard to move up and move through. So we were very pleased with our numbers. We were 10% higher for our English and 18% higher for those moving into math. So costs, assessments, it's a lot of work, but I really think I wish we would have students here today, but we really wanted to, is why we included those student testimonials. It's amazing to listen to the students talk. One of the students sat in my office and she said, I never want to let this program go. Please, can I be a mentor? I don't ever want to leave this program. She wants to go back to her high school and tell students that they should be in this program. they have become our biggest brand ambassadors, and I think that's the best demarcation that this does something, that it has affected them, that it's made them believe in themselves. And it's been a lot of work, but it's been really rewarding to see these students who don't have families suddenly have a family, even if it's a family of friends, to see that there are people who believe in them. We have one student who came in and said, you know, I would not be here. So he doesn't have parents, hasn't since he was about 7 years old. And he comes into our office and he said, you know, I was gonna give up. He was in my office, I think in like the second or third week, and he said, I wanna go into the military. I don't think I can do this. I don't think I belong here. This is too hard. And I said, I didn't make a mistake when I interviewed you, and I didn't make a mistake when I picked you, but in life we all make our own choices. And here, I want you to talk to some of my friends. Professional networks, I think, are important. He talked to several friends of mine in the military who had gone through it as ROTC, who had gone through it as specifically what he wanted, National Guard, and he came back and he said, I want to do this. I want to give myself a shot. I want to try. There was those moments where I said, you did that. Something internalized in you, and he's in the office all the time. He is one of the most engaged students, and he had a conversation with Sue one day where he said, you're my family, and I'm not letting you go. Whatever incarnation it takes on your campus, if you decide to pursue it, if you decide to incorporate any of these pieces, we didn't get to go over all of them. This was really broad brushstrokes, so there are more parts and pieces that went into this. We tried to put together as comprehensive of packages as we could, give you a sample of the schedule and what that looked like. But if you have questions about what this is or anything, you have Sue's business card and my business card already in your packets. TJ, this is his contact information. He might have business cards on him, doesn't he? Yes, he does. And I know that any of the other instructors that were involved in it, if you would want to hear it from a different perspective, David Turtle, English, he wanted to be here, he was teaching. But we're happy to give you every resource that we have if there was any part of this at all that you found value in.
So a bunch of questions, but I'll just do one at a time, right? What percentage of your students are full-time?
All of them. Well, probably like 90%. We do accept.
No, on the whole campus.
The whole campus?
Oh,
TJ?
I'm going to give you the, do you know? Because I know the rough answer behind that.
I know your program requires full-time.
We have 6,400 students. FTE right now we're at 4,200 roughly, which puts us on par with Eastern and Southern, I believe.
For full-time.
But our part-time is increasing as people are getting jobs and costs are going up and
Well, I
everything
know.
else.
My son is one of them, but that's another story. Back to school.
Our student leaders, to be an executive board officer in the Student Government Association, you have to carry 12 credit hours. But otherwise, to be a leader, you just have to take 3. So,
Hi, I'm really interested in your mentoring program, and I was wondering, do you have one mentor per student, and are you getting them from alumni, are you getting them from businesses, all of everybody?
Yeah, so this is the first year we did it, and it was this crazy idea that someone and I were like, we should do this, let's try it, let's see what happens. With the non-themed learning community, it was so hard to say, how do we attach them to somebody who understands what their unique major is? Because the diversity in the program was beautiful, but also the unique support that they would need to persist in their field existed. They were all placed with a full-time faculty member within their academic field of interest, and then we did reach out and try to use alumni as much as we could. We have campus advisory boards for certain departments, but not across all. So some of the professional mentors came from that. Some of the professional mentors, I have a really weird background in business and in new media and in all of these weird areas. And I reached out to my personal network in these areas as well. So we have an executive from Pratt & Whitney mentoring one of our business students. We have local police officers, people who were peer mentors and had peer mentors that are out working in the field. I said, hey, I know you can do this, can you come back? I had known them from, we have a student who's a music major. He is with a professional composer, a Berkeley graduate, and someone who attended MCC for 1 year, but wouldn't be listed amongst the alumni group, but he came back. And another music student who we placed with a contact of mine from when I was teaching working at UConn. She was one of my peer mentors, and then she was a teaching assistant, and she was a supervising teaching assistant, and she's 1 year out of school, and she has her own music management company. And I said, would you? And she said, yes. Because some of them are harder to come by, and not every athletic division at MCC has a campus advisory board, and not everybody has availability. So we pulled across.
So how much time would they be spending with them, and are there any, do you need to have any, I don't know, contractual agreements with them, or can you just have them come in? Because do they need certain credentials, or is this just something you can just pair up people, and if it doesn't work out, it's okay?
Yeah, so in the first year we did it where the requirement was the professional mentors had to agree to meet with the students for at least 1 hour a month for 4 months. And we told them that we hoped that this would exist longer, and we did give them sort of an overview. You have to agree to at least 1 hour a month. That I know of, and that I've heard from students, it's been more. The average meeting time has been about 3 hours, and they're doing many things together, which is kind of interesting. We're having an end of the semester barbecue. They're inviting their mentors. They've been inviting them to things like the community hikes, and sort of interesting. But the faculty mentors were kind of told, here's what we want you to do. We want you to reinforce that their education is achievable. We want you to reinforce that it can do something and propel them further in life. And we want you to, if you can, if possible, and wherever possible, bring them to events where they can expand their network. A big part of succeeding in life is who you know. And for most of our students, they're at a disadvantage there. And so for each of these professional mentors, they agreed to do all of those things when they could and where they could. And I actually have a waiting list of professional mentors for people who said, I would love to do this. And I said, I don't have a student in your field yet, but yeah. So when I do, I was like, it's great. I would love to have you, and this is fantastic. And eventually we'll begin increasing sort of what we're asking of them. We thought we have a lot of people who want to give back to the college, and they don't necessarily want to do it through financial obligations or can't. And we thought that this was a really great way to sort of bring them back to the college, to keep them engaged, and to do it that way.
I think probably everybody in the room works with challenged students, and it's pretty clear that if you could build this kind of a wraparound model, that it works. That it's going to make a difference in the lives of underrepresented, first generation, otherwise challenged students. I'm always looking at sort of big systems questions, like how do we take something like this to scale?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in your case, just more students. Obviously, there's a resource constraint issue. Part-time students, how do you engage them in some of the things that come out of this that clearly make a difference?
Mm-hmm.
And your retention numbers support that. I mean, you did great research, and I really compliment you on how you've done that, and that's important for thinking about the future. How important was that $5,000 grant to this happening at all?
It wouldn't have happened.
It wouldn't have happened without it. So, it takes money to do some of these. So some of these things we were able to do, and I was able to sort of leverage my background in business to get those corporate sponsorships, and I was able to leverage personal connections and connections across the campus to bring in those professional mentors. The lecturer on choice theory was a psychologist that I worked with when I was at UConn. So he lectures all over the country now that he's retired, and he gets about $5,000 a day, and he did it for me for $200. So it was huge, and we understand that there's huge costs attached to this, and being able to scale it up and out is a question of money and resources, and especially at our campuses where it's publish or perish, where the research or there's all of these other parts that move. It's really hard to say, the faculty were, and I can't stress this enough, the faculty involved in the learning community. This was not simply because we had these seminars and we kept them there. I wouldn't be able to pull out for you which piece was the most impactful. Each one mattered, and those connections to the faculty, I know every campus in this system tries, and I know faculty on all of the campuses, and I know the support and dedication they have to their students, but I also realistically know that what would happen if you pull that out, because it can't happen on a larger campus, I don't, it's one of those things where I say I don't know.
So obviously you worked very hard, the groundwork you all had to do was tremendous before you launched this program, I could see that. So this is your first time, the one that you're sharing with us, this is your first?
This is the first year of the, yep.
First year. So do you have plans to follow up with the students beyond graduation?
Yes.
Do you have an idea how you're going to do that?
So right now we're tracking them across their banner ID numbers. We're working with IR to do that, and we will continue to do that. I'm hoping that we'll be able to build, so when I was at UConn, we built our own alumni network external to the main campus, and that was for our students and our student leaders. And I would like to do something like that, because we all know that when we put out surveys for students to tell us where they're going and what they're doing, they don't know who's answer. I get them from the new school in Eastern, and I get them answer, which is a terrible thing, I understand. But we're hoping that it would work, that would happen, and we're also hoping that the model is so impactful that they'll want to share. You know, we have students who have already said, one of our students is already moving on because she's fashion design, she's been accepted to LaSalle College, and she said, can you come back in the summer? I'd love to come back in the summers and help. And, you know, I think it's just kind of, if we can reach out and send maybe an alumni newsletter. But yes, we're planning on tracking them for as much as we can. I don't think that a lot of our students are staying within the system, and I'm not sure what the system constraints would be. Obviously, their banner IDs are not going to exist to move forward to one of the other colleges, so we get a little money there. Might be interested to have conversations with colleges to see if we could track them across their successes there.
She's Amanda.
Yes.
Trent was the instructor. I'm Susan.
Is this part a trend? I know,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't go back.
Barber is TJ.
Do you have plans to continue this next year?
Yes, so I have several grants that I've written that I'm waiting on, fingers crossed.
Okay, so to get new cohorts in.
Yes.
So my question really is, do you plan to have a random sample of your students in a cohort?
When it gets larger.
Well, for a test, any kind of test, would you test it on a random sample of students rather than the hand-picked? Because you hand-picked them, right?
The students in the,
In this program.
Kind of, sort of.
Yeah.
So a little background information. So this program first started about 3 years ago, fall 2013. I was hired in Thanksgiving, so the program had started without actual support. So then, you know, it's just been trying to get things together, and then fall 2015 was the first year that we did it as a one-year model. So as we're recruiting for students, we're really limited by scores, first generation and all that stuff. And a lot, what happens is part-time students want to do this, but because of the full-time constraint, they drop off. So we try to cherry pick, but we really can't, and it's almost the deficit model at this point, but going forward, we're gonna try to cherry pick more.
So it's always first generation college students?
Yes, a lot of the
And
grants.
of course, the scores. But, the age cohort, is 17-21?
Yes, because in the first inclination of it, or the first version of it, there were older students, and that just threw the dynamic.